feel free to email us and we'll get a copy to you. These are good for people just to kind of carry around with you, write notes on. It's got a nice little memory jogger in the back and some comforting words inside. These are the upcoming events that we have that I encourage you to take advantage of. If you haven't tried registering for one of our survivor to survivor forums, I really encourage you to do that. We've got one coming up next Tuesday. And then on the 16th, we'll be back with two of the staff members that are here tonight, walking you through the basics of valuing the reconstruction cost of your home and or the repair cost, and reaching an agreement with your insurance company on that big piece of your claim. So we're going to be talking about that on the 16th. And then on the 23rd, we will be bringing you guidance on income tax considerations, tax filing considerations for disaster impacted households. Hopefully you all have visited our online library. We are doing our best to keep it updated for you. Just a reminder that we are here to give you general guidance, not specific legal advice. We really encourage you, if you feel like you have a legal question, to try, you can start in the Find Help directory on our website to find some lawyers that actually consider themselves policyholder lawyers, meaning that's their specialty, is advising people on their rights with regard to insurance. It's a great place to start to find a lawyer if you want to talk to one. We will be offering in March a pro bono legal help clinic where we will have volunteer lawyers that will be available to answer questions on an appointment basis. Just a reminder that even if you find a lawyer or some other kind of expert through one of our programs where you hear them speak or you find them in our directory, that's no substitute for doing your own homework on checking their references and making sure that they're the right person for you on a personal level. So our main presenters today are going to be myself, Sandy Watts, who's an insurance specialist on our team, and Tracy Garceau with the Colorado Division of Insurance. You probably have already seen this slide if you've been at our prior presentations. I'm kind of like a Ralph Nader, but just for insurance. I've been doing this work for many, many years, and I am honored to be able to bring you, to translate confusing lingo and try to simplify things for you because I'm an advocate for you as the consumer. That's my main focus. Sandy, if you want to just give a quick hello and give a brief recap of your background.
Oh, hi, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you all tonight. I am an insurance specialist. My background is as an adjuster. I worked for a carrier for 25 years. I also am an IICRC master restorer for fire and water. I was a franchisee of a restoration company, so I sort of have a wide background there. So we are just going to try to help you get through. It's really dry tonight, so I apologize in advance for all the policy language, but I think it's going to help you, sort of navigate your way through what you have ahead. Thanks.
And I really appreciate having Sandy because I and my team, we've read, lots of policies over the years, but there's nothing like somebody who's been an adjuster to kind of bring that perspective to help you really understand the lay of the land. Tracy, if you want to give a greeting, we're so glad to have you with us. Tracy has been joining us on our roadmap to recovery programs for the people who lost their homes in 2020 in Colorado, and she's back with us on this Marshall Fire roadmap to recovery. So thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Amy, for having us, and welcome everyone. And it's always this slide that I remember. I owe you a picture, so I'm gonna try to remember. But I too started as an adjuster. There was a day when I was climbing ladders and going through debris. but moved up to compliance for the industry before coming to Colorado and joining the Division of Insurance. So I've been here about 8 years, and it's a pleasure working with each and every one of you who contact us, albeit under such dire circumstances most of the time. But we're here to help, and there will be information on how to reach us at a later slide.
Not that much later. So here's the special library that Tracy's agency has set up, and then here's their toll-free number where you can reach them. And okay, just a few reminders that you just to, a lot of what we want to do is help you be in the right frame of mind to approach this challenging situation as best you can. And so we want to remind you that insurance is a vehicle to get you back as close as possible to where you were before your loss, but it won't drive itself, which means you've got to be more proactive than you might have thought based on all the ads you see on TV about, fast, fair, and friendly and all that. That this is really, you paid for coverage and good claim service. We're here to help you get both. But obviously the reason why we have this program is because when large dollars are at stake, insurers have set up a lot of procedural requirements that tends to slow down the payment of money. And we know how important it is to all of you to get clarity on how much money you can get out of your policy so that you can make the decisions that you need to make for your family. And that's our main goal tonight, is help you be armed with that math. Because we know from our many years that knowledge equals power and money. The more you understand about what you're entitled to, the more you will collect. And some of you may know that we are working very hard in the legislature in Colorado right now to get you more breathing room, because we know how much pressure you're under with the deadlines that are in your policy. And Tracy's agency is really has been incredibly proactive since December at issuing directives to insurers and making very clear to them that that the regulatory agency in Colorado expects them to behave and do the right thing and get you your policy benefits as quickly as possible. So again, just state of mind, a lot of people think, oh, is UP telling me that I've got to put on the gloves and get ready for a fight? And we're not telling you that at all. What we're telling you is that we really want you to see this as a business negotiation and to be effective in that negotiation, right? So that, just like everything else in life, you get more flies with honey is a common saying. Very hard sometimes when you're dealing with an adjuster who may be either young or untrained or comes from another area or sort of has an attitude, a chip on their shoulder, and or doesn't seem to know the rules themselves. It can be very hard to follow this advice, but we really encourage you to remember those two words, polite assertiveness, right? Another reminder that your claim journal that we've been talking about since day one is so important. Not only will it help you stay organized, but it's going to help you, most people in the situation that you're in are not sleeping normally. There's a brain fog that a lot of people talk about. So having this journal is a really good way of just keeping yourself on track. And it's also a good way of having a paper trail of how your claim is being handled and what has happened. Because as you all may know already, or soon will, very unlikely that the adjuster that's assigned to your claim now will be the same person working with you 6 months from now. And because of that, your journal will help with keeping continuity. So we're going to talk today about digging into your insurance policy, figuring out all the available benefits, understanding the lingo, the policy terms, and then we're going to touch on some of the formulas and the math in the policy around depreciation, meaning how the insurer will temporarily reduce the value of your loss to account for the condition it was in at the time, and then pay you the balance hopefully subject to your policy wording once you establish the replacement value and or replace those items. And then we'll be talking about those other buckets. We talk a lot about buckets to help you understand how your policy is organized. So hopefully you all have by now a complete and current copy of your policy. If you don't, the law is that your insurer is supposed to give it to you within 3 days of your request. If you're asking for a certified copy, which we do recommend as well, it's just a little extra assurance that the policy you're working with is the current complete one. They have 30 days to give that. So we encourage you to ask for that certified copy. We also suggest that you make an extra copy of your policy so you have one working version that you can scribble on and the other one you keep clean. Okay, I just want to point out a new bulletin. One of the many helpful things that Tracy's agency has been putting out. This one just came out, and this is relevant to tonight because what it says is that the insurance company has to give you, you have to ask for it, so it's not automatic. So I'm encouraging you here to ask in writing for this written explanation, and you can reference this bulletin B5.44. They're supposed to give you basically a summary of the coverages and limits applicable to your loss. So they're supposed to help you understand exactly what we are helping you understand tonight. So I encourage you to exercise your right here because it's just another way of getting clarity on what you're entitled to. If you had a manufactured home, the policy buckets are very similar. Same thing with a renter, except you won't have coverage for the structure itself, but the buckets of available dollars will be broken out. So just another reminder before we get into the nitty gritty, most of the people that have used our services, they come out on the other end and saying, wow, there were a lot of things that I was able to get that my adjuster didn't offer, and I got it because I learned from you. So sometimes you get lucky, you get a great adjuster that's really bending over backwards to give you everything, but generally the adjusters are really overworked, and it's very and plus some of them will come from another state. They don't know the rules in Colorado. So knowing your own policy is really going to help you a lot. And as Sandy said, we know this is not sexy talk here, but we are really trying to help you be as empowered to get through this as possible. So that said, we know that a lot of you are facing decision points. We encourage you to try to pace yourself with those decisions because pretty hard in the first full month after you have lost a home or been dislocated from your house to really make these big life decisions. But I know a lot of you feel a lot of pressure. So the main ones for most people is, do I have enough insurance? Which I think a lot of people are worrying that they don't. And can I face rebuilding? Can I deal with that? That's a decision that a lot of people take quite a while to make. If you are sure, that's great. But it is so normal to be grappling with that decision for quite some time. If you're underinsured, what are your options? You can try to negotiate an above limit settlement. People ask us that all the time. It's hard to do. I don't want to mislead you. If you're underinsured, we've got a whole section of our website about it. There's not one way to remedy it, but we give you a lot of guidance on that and other options. Build smaller, cheaper, creatively, buy instead of rebuild, take out a loan, use savings, participate in a group rebuild where you can get a break on some of the materials and labor, file or join a lawsuit. So those are just some of the ways that you may be able to contend with the fact that you're underinsured. I will say that rumors are flying about per square foot building costs, and that's fueling some fear. And I would really encourage you to you can let those rumors bounce right off of your head and focus on what would a reputable, experienced builder charge you to put your house back the way it was. So until you've got some sense of that, I wouldn't worry too much about what you're hearing about 300, 400, 500, 600 a square foot. It can be very scary. And I think that is fueling a lot of people's fear. And it's certainly, I'm not trying to downplay that there's a lot of you that are underinsured. Our surveys show 2/3 almost every time. But I'm just trying to help you go on facts rather than rumors. Okay, so your declarations page is going to be the key. And I'm going to turn over the presentation now to Sandy to get us into digging into the policy and figuring out what you have.
Excellent. Okay, hi. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in and go through all this. The declarations page of your policy is, what most people, see. It's the key to all your insurance payments. They never look the same company to company, but they all have to contain the same information. Who's the insured? Where's the property located? What are your coverage dates? And then your major coverages, limits and liability, your forms and endorsements, deductibles, and the mortgagee information. And we'll go through all of that as we go through here. So this is a sample declarations page. So we've highlighted a few things up in the upper right-hand side, policy period. We've got I don't know if you guys can see my pointer or not, but we've got the name, the address. This center box here is the sort of the key to everything. These are all your major coverages, coverage A dwelling. This is an old low policy. Other structures, we'll talk about that, personal property, loss of use, and then your liability coverages over here. This is the deductible, $500 deductible.
Sorry.
That's right, deductible for the policy. These are things, this is when people's eyes immediately start glazing over. These are all the form numbers of the endorsements that you have. They're super confusing, and they're also super important because a lot of times endorsements have the same name, like a special form or an important notice. They have the same name, but they have different information in them. So you have to kind of look at the form number and the date it was issued to know which one you're looking at. So we'll go through that a little bit. And then down at the bottom is the mortgagee. Okay, so all of the policies are made up of these elements. You've got the definitions, and we'll talk about that. They define the words in the policy. You've got your coverages. Those are those buckets that Amy was talking about, those major coverages. You've got additional coverages, which are sort of add-on coverages. And then you have types of losses. So the coverages are like what is insured, like your house. The losses insured and losses not insured are what is your house insured for and what is it not insured for. The loss settlement provisions are how they pay you out, how they're going to give you the money. And then the conditions of the policy, there are things that the insurance companies are required to do, but there's also things that your policy requires you to do. So that's in there. Okay. And I'm sorry to go fast, but there's a ton of information tonight. Definitions, these are definitions from 3 different policies. And just so that you know, each policy defines each word a little bit different. Each company has a different word. So sometimes insured, includes domestic partners in some policies. It doesn't in others, that type of thing. So you have to go to your policy and look and see what those words mean, okay? Things like actual cash value, right here, that's a big thing we'll talk about a lot tonight, but different policies have different definitions of that. In general, if you're reading your policy and you see a term that's bolded, okay, it's in bold, that means you can go back to the definitions and it should be in the definitions, or where it has little, quotes around it, where like on number 13, actual cash value means cost to repair. So that's how you decide. It is the general rule is if it's not defined in your policy and there's a question about what a word means, then you defer to the common meaning of that word. Okay, next. Take a deep breath because we've got a lot to go. We've just started. So go ahead, please. Okay, so here are your buckets of coverage. The letters differ by company. The A, B, C, and D, as we have them listed here, are pretty common. State Farm does it a little bit different. So if you're, with State Farm, it's different. But these are the main things we want to talk about. Your dwelling extensions, and I'll talk about what those are. Your contents or personal property, and your loss of use. Okay. Renters policies are the same. They just don't have coverage A because you don't own the building. So the owner of the building would insure coverage A, and then manufactured homes are generally the same. There's some other provisions that are different. Okay, so this is another sample declaration page. I just kind of wanted you to see how they differ. And one of the things we're going to talk about, and I saw in the Q&A that there's already questions about replacement cost endorsements. So we will talk about those. But if you look on the bottom here, replacement value endorsement, that's a personal property endorsement. The one above it, limited home replacement. That's what we call extended coverage. Your building code upgrade limits are in here. Okay, so this is just sort of giving you an idea of how to look at your declarations page and find the things that you need to know about. So go ahead. Okay, this is a sample, same thing, of a mobile manufactured home declaration. It's a little bit blurry, or got new contacts. The same information is found in there. So go ahead. Next slide. Yeah, can you go back? This is a renters, and if you see on the renters, personal property, there's just no dwelling coverage. Okay, and your deductible, this is a little simpler. Okay, so let's start with coverage A, dwelling. This is your big ticket item, okay? And what we're going to show you is that your coverage A limit in this policy, it's $300,200. You're going to end up with more of that because there's all sorts of different coverages that are sort of endorsed on and hidden in the policy that we're going to show you how to find, and so you can add up what you're entitled to. Okay, so coverage A, what I wanted to do is just give you just a quick example of two different policies from two different companies. And this is an example of why you have to be careful talking to your neighbors. We really encourage talking to your neighbors and getting information on how your claim's being handled, but be careful and be aware of the fact that not only do different companies cover things a little differently, sometimes different policies sold by the same company. Like for instance, Farmers has a whole bunch of different policies. So you have to read your policy and make sure that you're looking at your policy. So these are just two that talk about the dwelling, and it's basically, your home. And some of them say it has to be used principally as a primary residence, okay, as a private residence. So go ahead. Most covers the main house. Okay, coverage B, other structures, sometimes called dwelling extension. Most companies set the coverage limit of other structures at 10% of the coverage A limit. So that's how it's sort of a default setting. Some companies specifically let you increase this amount. Some don't. We see a lot of underinsurance issues with dwelling extension because, if somebody has a bunch of barns, if you have more than one structure, or if you have, like, say, a cottage that's maybe a living unit or something, a lot of times you can get underinsured by this. Okay. Some items that are other structures, just real quick, can also be fences, retaining walls, type of thing like that. And then there's some policies that, like, hardscaping of landscaping, falls under other structures. And then a different policy, it might fall under landscaping coverage. So go ahead, Amy, please.
And Sandy, it is pretty common, isn't it, that people sometimes want to interpret it depending on their situation. That if you are short on your coverage A and you have more B, more other structures coverage than you might need, that you can argue that something is physically attached to the dwelling and should be payable. Or
yes, absolutely, absolutely. It doesn't hurt to ask. Okay, so this is just a sample from policy structures on your property that are not physically attached to the house. So most of the policies say that other structures are things separated from the main dwelling by clear space. You can get into a debate with them, like there's a lot of debate about decks. You know, sometimes adjusters try to put decks that are sort of attached to the house on other structures. And that's a really good example of what Amy was talking about, where, you know, really it's not, you know, some adjusters get so particular that, you know, if you've got a concrete slab and it's right, you know, separated from the house by, you know, 1.5 inches, they try to put it as other structures. So we just have to look. So this is where you go. You look in your policy for either dwelling extension, that's on the upper left there, and it talks about the other structures separated from the dwelling by clear space. Okay, structures connected by only a fence, utility line, or similar connection are considered to be other structures. So if there's like a power line going or something like that, and you can see different policies just line it out differently. And then here's the bold. So when you see this bolded, then you know to go back to definitions. And whereas the one on the upper left has the definition kind of inside of it, the one on the upper right, and I put the definition below there, separate structure, they put what a separate structure is somewhere else. So one of the common things too is if you have a separate structure that's rented or held for rental as a dwelling unit, a lot of policies don't cover that, and a lot of people don't know that until afterwards. Just real quick before we go to the next slide, all fences, walls not part of a building, sidewalk, walkway, driveways, pools, whether or not abutting or connected to the dwelling. See, so that's different. So like I was saying, some of the policies you can argue if it's abutted to the building, you can argue that it's a separate structure. It never hurts to ask, especially if you're out of coverage in one bucket. It really doesn't, you're not going to lose anything by asking, and you might get something. So
Yep.
Okay, coverage C, contents. So this is everything you'd take with you if you moved, pretty much. They talk about turning it upside down and shaking your house. Whatever falls out is personal property. But then somebody wrote into me a while back and said, what about my patio furniture and my pots and plants that are in pots? Anything like that, those are all considered personal property as well. Generally, it's coverage C. Coverage C a lot of times is set by the insurance company too as a specific percentage. It does cover your property while it's anywhere in the world. If you have guests, some of the policies cover guest properties. If you had contents or one of your, say, a friend of theirs had stored some stuff in a room and your house burned down, your policy might not cover that, but their policy might cover their stuff while it's in your house. So you have to look at that.
Yeah, that's a really common one, Sandy, that we get all the time. You know, people often have the property of a relative
or adult children.
Right. And they don't have insurance, so it's definitely something to negotiate. But you know, we always want to remind you that, you know, not to commit fraud and not to claim things that that you didn't own, but to negotiate and be as candid as you can.
Yep. Okay, so this is an example of policy language. We cover personal property owned or used by an insured where it's anywhere in the world. At your request, we'll cover personal property owned by others, okay, occupied by an insured. So that you just have to look at your policy. There's no sense me reading this. You just have to look at your policy and know that the different policies have different things. Okay, so it's also important to know that some things are subject to special limits, money, and it's different again based on your policy, money, securities, business property. This is something, you know, people working at home have a lot more business property at home than they used to. Something people need to look at. Watercraft, trailers, computers. A lot of times you'll see jewelry and firearms having special limits, and they do, but that really applies to theft and not to fire specifically in most policies. So, okay, so property not covered. Okay, these are usually things that are specifically insured elsewhere or better insured elsewhere. So jewelry that's over, you know, a certain amount, art if it has its own coverage. Animals, birds, and fish are not covered. If you have tenants, like say you rent out a room, something like that, the tenant property of tenants, roomers, or boarders is not covered. Motor vehicles, we see this a lot in rural areas. People have motor vehicles that aren't registered, and they're just like in a barn or someplace like that. Certain ones that can't be registered are sometimes covered under certain policies, like four-wheelers or things like that. Handicapped, the little handicap scooters are sometimes usually covered. Anyway, RVs are also not covered, even if they're not being used. Okay, coverage D is additional living expenses, ALE. You guys are familiar with this by now. This is a very widely varying coverage, and there's a lot of things you can do. You can have a money limit, you can have a time limit, you can have a money and a time limit, you can have no limit. So really look at your declarations page, look and see. I know that Colorado has some legislation that they've passed on limits. So those do supersede what your policy says. So you know, Tracy and her department can help you out with that if you get some issues with that.
So I just want to throw in there that what you should have been offered when your policy came up for renewal, you should have been offered to buy 24 months of ALE, 2 years. But we are finding still quite a few people that only still have 12. But the law, so if you were not offered the 24 months at the point of sale, that could be something that you can take issue with your insurer and their sales representative.
Okay.
What's on that? I mean, I think we're going to go into this a little bit more, but I want to make sure Sandy, you good with moving on?
Yeah, if I could, this is
yeah,
Tracy.
I want to.
Oh, this is Tracy. I just want to say Colorado doesn't have a dollar limit on ALE. It's just a time limit. So it's either 12 or 24 or 36 months with no dollar limit. We have seen some policies out there with dollar limits, and we have contacted the insurers that have issued those, and they will be correcting themselves, but there's no dollar limit.
And that's a great peace of mind. I want to back up just a tiny bit again, Amy, we didn't talk about, so most of the policies talk about, there's different types of ALE. Additional living expenses are generally the actual costs you incur, meaning spend, to maintain your standard of living. A few policies have what's called fair rental value. Looks like somebody wrote fair market value, but it would be the fair rental value of your home. Now, most policies have fair rental value, but it's for that part of your residence that you rent to others. One of the things, and you know, UP, we get into creative ALE. I'm not sure where the workshop is lined up on that, but there's a lot of things you can ask. If you're having a hard time finding a place to live, a lot of times after these big wildfires, there's just not enough housing. So sometimes you can negotiate instead of actual costs that you spend. You can negotiate for a monthly amount. Be aware that in a lot of cases, if your policy says you have to incur it, a lot of the insurers are not negotiating. But it's something you should always ask. Go ahead. Okay, so this is the no money limit on ALE in Colorado that Tracy talked about. There's a link to the town hall frequently asked questions. And then if your home was your primary residence, Colorado law requires that your homeowner's policy covers at least 12 months of ALE, and you should have been offered 24. Okay. UP, we do a lot of surveys after these events, and our 2020 data shows that a lot of people may not have been offered 24. So if you weren't offered, you need to go and ask your insurer for that. This is just an example of loss of use with a money limit. So go ahead. We don't, you guys, luckily that doesn't matter. So here it is. This is the additional living expenses versus the negotiated fair rental value of the home you lost. Again, if you don't have it, you can always ask for it, and the worst they can say is no. Okay, so I just want to break it down. This is the most standard form of ALE language. Okay, so it's just sort of how it works. You've got this is really geared toward partial loss people with smoke damage, with some smoke. I mean, it's pretty clear that your house isn't fit to live in if it's burned all the way. So for your partial loss people, you've got a loss insured. Okay, that's a fire. Causes your residence premises, that's your house, to become uninhabitable, which means not fit to live in. Okay, if you meet all three of these, under 99% of the policies, you're going to be owed additional living expenses. Okay, some of the policies, we had a few issues in California. Some of the policies say it has to be your property that's damaged. We had a lot of infrastructure issues in our past wildfire here. I'm not sure how that's working there in Colorado. But if your house is uninhabitable because you don't have, municipal power or water, then that's something you need to look at as well. But for most of the time, your issue is going to be showing that your house is not fit to live in, and that's going to trigger your additional living expenses. Okay, and this is, what are you owed? You're owed your increased cost, okay, to maintain your standard of living over and above what you normally spend. Okay, so if you own your house, it sounds really weird, especially if your house isn't there, but you have to continue to pay your mortgage. So your rent on the temporary home is an increased cost. If you're a renter and you usually pay $1,500 a month, but now you have to move to a place that's $2,000, then the insurance company has to pay the $500 a month increased cost. Same idea with your food. If you normally spend $500, now you're spending $1,000, you've got to eat out. They'll pay the difference. Same with utility bills. Also, if you have to commute a longer distance, those type of things, your commute costs are higher. Okay. You're owed to maintain your standard of living. And this is something I see. And I understand, it's hard. There's, housing crunches after these fires, but I see a lot of people, living for a couple years in like an apartment or something like that. You really, as soon as you can find housing that is close to what you lived in before, really try to get in there, because rebuilding your house is kind of it's a long journey. And so you need to be comfortable, and they owe you to maintain your standard of living. Colorado doesn't have a limit. So as long as it's substantially similar to what you lost, then you're entitled to it. So it's really important, and it'll help you get through it if you're comfortable while it's going on. The other thing, and it's really important, how long do they owe you? It's not automatic. So even if you have a 24-month policy, they don't automatically owe you 24 months. They owe you the reasonable shortest time to repair or replace your home, or for your household to settle elsewhere. So when you buy a replacement house, that stops your ALE. If you're able to repair your house, in a certain amount of time, then that stops it too. So some people think it's automatic. Okay, so we did this before, but just to reiterate, what qualifies: rent for temporary housing, if you need a renter's insurance policy; mileage, if you have to set up, internet and phone and all that at your new house; claim expenses, moving costs; pet boarding, if you can't find a hotel that takes pets, they need to, board your pets until you can get yourself situated. Most insurers have a list of things that they cover under additional living expenses, so ask for that. Some of the companies send out UP's lists, so I always like to see that. Okay, ALE options. Yeah, like I've said before, sometimes you need to be creative. Okay, be careful, because as it says here, sometimes buying a temporary home, and we've seen a lot of this with the campfire and stuff. When you buy a temporary home, it's probably going to cut off your additional living expense benefits because you are settled elsewhere. So think about that. Ask for fair rental, but ask for a set monthly amount based on what your house might have rented for before the fire, even if you don't have that coverage. Now, if you don't have that coverage, they don't have to give it to you, but it's something that, just ask, and a lot of people get it. Fifth wheel RVs, sometimes those are negotiated. And then ALEs, tiny homes, just be creative, but also remember how long you might be in that situation. So that's another thing. I've had people complain that, they bought a fifth wheel, and a year and a half, they're still living in the fifth wheel, and they're sick of it. So just kind of think about that. Okay, yes, and I apologize, I'm going really fast. This is a lot of information. We will put the slides up on our website under past events on our website. So, hopefully you're not writing all this down. I know it's a lot of information, but we'll just keep plowing through. Okay, we're going to talk about additional coverages, and these are kind of good because these add on to your coverage A. Okay, so the three main additional coverages are debris removal, trees, plants, and shrubs, and temporary repairs. Debris removal. Okay, this is the most confusing coverage. Okay. One thing is, take pictures of it before it gets taken away, because sometimes you can see content sitting in it. We don't recommend sifting through the ashes. Try to get pictures of things that you can still recognize in your photos, and keep your photos in the cloud or somewhere. So 5% coverage is pretty common, 5% of coverage A. And the way this works, because people always call me in a panic, and they said, oh, my insurance company put debris removal in my coverage A claim, and I'm going to run out of coverage, and I want them to move it, and so forth. So it's really important to know that 5% of debris removal only kicks in when your coverage A limit is exhausted. Okay, and sometimes it applies to other limits, and we'll talk about that too. But so all of the debris removal goes into your original estimate for the cost to rebuild your house. Then when you hit that limit, that opens up another 5%. Okay, so that's an important thing. There are, I don't know, is there a consolidated debris removal program that's going to happen here for this fire? I'm not sure.
There is, but it's still, the details are still getting worked out. So we'll have more information about that down the road. I think some people are still waiting for the details to get ironed out, and some people are thinking about moving forward with private debris removal right now.
Yeah, and it's important to know that it's your house. You are entitled to use who you'd like to use to do the debris removal. If you're underinsured, there are some advantages. Usually all the FEMA debris removal programs are negotiated individually after each disaster. So we can't really give you a blanket explanation that it will be better for you to sign up for it if you're underinsured, but in general, that's the way it's been working. So take a look at it that way. And the toxic substance removal and disposal is really important. There's state and local regulations on where they can put some of this debris. So make sure if you hire a private contractor that they do that properly. Also, policies differ with respect to trees, plants, and shrubs. In the rural areas, this gets to be a really important thing, but most policies the debris removal for trees, plants, and shrubs is separate, and it is not in your regular debris removal. So it's under, and we'll get to the trees, plants, and shrubs. So go ahead, please. Okay, these are two different policies. On the left is State Farm, on the right is Farmers. These are just examples of the differences in policy languages. Okay, it talks about like in the State Farm one, when the amounts payable for the property plus the debris removal exceeds the limit for the damaged property, an additional 5% of that limit is available for debris removal. State Farm's one of the companies that covers the 5% debris removal under all of theirs, under the coverage A, other structures, and contents. So it says specifically there that it didn't cover trees, shrubs, and plants. So you have to look. Okay, and then this debris removal on the farmer's side. In general, you know, people freak out when they see that contamination and so forth. That generally doesn't apply to fire, you know, prepping the site for fire. So unless they give you a hassle, don't worry about that. Okay, so trees, plants, and shrubs. This covers specified landscaping. They talk about what they cover. Only cover specific perils. Fire is one of the perils, so you guys should be fine. It generally adds 5% of coverage. I've seen no coverage, and I've seen up to 20%. So, but in most cases, it's 5%, and includes debris removal for the trees. Okay, so that's unfortunate because 5% of your coverage A limit is pretty small, depending on how. Now, most of you guys are, you know, in more densely populated areas where it's less of a problem. But cross-reference that with your debris coverage and see, most of the time it'll talk about which one pays for the debris of trees. Okay, these are two examples. We don't need to get into these too much, but these are what you want to look for is the bottom, see bottom left. This coverage is additional insurance. Okay, so that 5% stacks on. Sometimes they have a per item. Most of them have a per item limit. The Liberty Mutual on the left says no more than 500 per tree, shrub, or plant. The Farmers on the right says 750 for tree, shrubs, or plants. So it just kind of depends. And these are both additional coverages. Okay, so let's determine available benefits. Let's see what we have here. So what we're going to talk about now are other add-ons to coverage A, and you'll see where the boxes, so the coverage A is on the upper left there. Your limited home replacement cost endorsement, that's what you call extended replacement coverage, okay? And then at the bottom there's the building code upgrade limit. And the base limits plus those endorsements, okay, and the way the policy works is going to give you what your benefits are, your maximum benefits for your home. This little example here doesn't have the amount specifically for the extended replacement coverage there in the middle. So you have to kind of do the math there of 150% of 300,000. But the building code upgrade is specifically listed there, $75,050. So you just have to kind of look and see. Okay. Okay. So this is where the math comes in. Okay. So you take your coverage A, your dwelling limits, extended replacement cost. And we'll get to that when we get to the endorsements, but it's just basically an amount over the coverage A limit. And it's intended for losses like this. When they first started adding these extended replacement cost coverages, it was to cover, you know, these disasters. And, you know, it's good it's there, but it doesn't seem to reach everybody. But you add that on, you add your 5% debris removal, you add whatever code upgrade coverage you have, then your trees, shrubs, and plants. We'll talk about inflation coverage a little bit, but it's so complicated and so different with every policy that sometimes it's not worth doing.
Yeah,
but
I
go
just
ahead.
ask Tracy. So in addition to requiring that that the consumer be offered 24 months of ALE when they buy or renew the policy. Colorado law also requires the insured to offer 20% of CODA, I'm sorry, extended coverage. Is that, do I have that right, Tracy?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and so if somebody didn't get offered that, just like if they didn't get offered the 24 months or they didn't get offered the 20% extended replacement, that would be something that they should come to your agency for help on, yes?
Yes, we can conduct an investigation all the way back to the policy inception to find out what happened during that sale, to see if there's any record of it being offered and declined. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, back to you, Sandy.
Okay. Okay, inflation coverage. This is just to show you that the policies, most of the companies calculate their inflation coverage as of the date of loss of the claim, but make sure each one of them is going to talk about how to do it. It's complicated math. Just sometimes you'll see it on there, and just ask. Know that it does increase your policy a little bit.
This was a
Okay.
question this was a question we got before from pre-submitted for tonight.
Oh, okay. And okay, I didn't see this. So it depends. We can't answer that. If we go back to the prior slide, your policy is going to have in the inflation adjustment language how they calculate it and when they calculate it. So some of the policies specifically say that they'll calculate it as of the date of loss. Some policies say they're only going to recalculate it once a year. And then the date of loss to the date of settlement, it usually goes as of the date of loss. So there's a lot of
add here. Tracy?
Pardon?
I was asking Tracy if she has anything to add on the inflation. Is that a question you guys are getting at the department? I'm sorry, you're on mute. I'm going to take that as a no. We can't hear you.
I will say that inflation isn't the place that we will talk about this, because your settlement, your replacement cost, the cost to rebuild your home is going to be priced at the time it's rebuilt. So that it doesn't really have anything to do with inflation, because the building prices do go up when you finish building your house. They should account for that. Okay, so doing the math, if you have a coverage A limit of $500,000, you have 25% extended replacement cost. That's another $125,000. And if you have 20% code upgrade, now they don't stack on each other. It all goes back to coverage A. Okay, so you have 20% of $500,000, which is another 100 for code upgrades. We'll talk about how that's applied. You've got 5% debris removal, which puts another 25,000 on top. So if you add all these together, this $500,000 policy is actually a $750,000 policy. So that's good news, okay? And then we'll talk about when we get to those endorsements how they work, but it is generally good news for you guys. Okay. Understanding lingo and policy terms. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about loss settlement provisions. Major points: replacement cost, actual cash value. There are all the time that, policies always have endorsements, and every state, what happens is most of the insurers write like a standard policy that's for the whole US, and there's different laws in different states. So they, instead of doing a different policy for every state, they simply put on an endorsement that makes it like a Colorado endorsement or California endorsement. So they're changed all the time. Okay. Most policies do, and this is what I was talking about on that inflation. Most policies contain language that allows reimbursement for the amounts actually and necessarily spent for covered repairs up to the policy limit. So that's really important to know. And that's, I think, that inflation question really is answered more with this than that inflation coverage. That inflation coverage is really small. It's only attached to like the consumer price index. So Go ahead.
Okay, and I want to, I think it's fair to say that, but one of the areas where there's the most negotiation between homeowners and their insurance companies are around the loss settlement provisions. So in terms of when the insurer pays what they owe, and there's a lot more play in that, in those negotiations than you might expect.
Mhm. Okay, here's an example. So it's important. Most people don't have these types of policies anymore, but this is an actual cash value policy. These are actually specific types of property that are covered for only actual cash value. Some manufactured homes, the whole dwelling is insured on an actual cash value. And what that means is the cost to replace it less depreciation. So think about cars. Like if you have a car and it's a brand new car and you paid, $20,000 for it, and you drive off the lot on that day and you crash the car, you're going to get $20,000 because it hasn't depreciated. But if you drive your car for 10 years and you beat it up and you get into a crash, they will only pay you the actual cash value, what it's worth at that time. So if you see this endorsement, look for replacement cost coverage because they usually put it back in, okay, especially in manufactured home policies. Okay, so this is the same policy, but they add, so this is exactly what I was talking about, the personal property replacement cost endorsement. So this endorsement, this is a policy that says everything settled at ACV, actual cash value, but this endorsement adds replacement costs back on. Okay. Go ahead. This is very common. Okay. This is the most common way that they settle. This is dwelling coverage and coverage fee separate structures. So for the most part, they pay actual cash value until the property is repaired or replaced. Okay, so that's important. That means that they're going to apply, depreciation. State Farm doesn't do this anymore in California. I'm not sure if they do it in Colorado. In California, State Farm doesn't depreciate any. They don't apply depreciation anymore. But look at your policy, okay? But in 90% of the cases where they pay ACV, they will release that withheld depreciation at the time you repair the house. Okay. Okay. Endorsements are really important. When people get their packets of insurance, it's kind of overwhelming because they have all the endorsements shoved in with everything, and it's really hard not to read it all, but they're important and they're part of your policy. Okay, and you got to try to do your best to keep them and read them. They modify or clarify provisions. They can add or remove coverage. They can limit or expand coverage. Sometimes they conflict with the policy itself. Ask for clarification if something doesn't make sense, but we're going to show you some here. Next. Okay, so this is the biggie. Okay, this happens to be a State Farm endorsement. We should have swapped it out because it's a California one. But this is a replacement cost. This talks about how they replace, how they do it, the reasonable and necessary cost to repair or replace with similar construction and same use on the premises. Okay, so that's that. If you go, we should have another one. Oh, we don't have another one. So yours might say something different. You just want to go to this loss settlement provision and read it. But this is an endorsement that changes the loss settlement provision. So be aware that happens. Okay, here we go. Depreciation, code upgrades, and extended benefits. Okay, so these are the important ones. Extended replacement cost. Okay, it's a big one. Code upgrade coverage. It's a big one. So you need to know. So the purpose of this slide is to show you how different, these are three different declarations. These are three different. So if you look in the upper left, this one, this happens to be I think this is a State Farm policy. They have, yeah, it is, because option ID is increased dwelling and option OL is ordinance or law. This is good. See, it says exactly how much they owe you for your increased dwelling and exactly how much coverage you have for ordinance or law. This one's a little bit more confusing on the upper right. You see replacement costs. So this means you've got to go and you paid a premium for it. So that tells me that you're probably getting some more coverage. You have to go into that packet of information, and where this highlighted here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but this number here is the name of the endorsement, and that's the date, and you have to dig through and find it and see what it says. Same with this one. This, I think, is a Liberty policy, Home Protector Plus. So this doesn't really tell you anything. It doesn't say replacement. If you look through here, nothing really says replacement cost or extended. So when you get these, you have to kind of go through and look at them. And, you know, we've had people who, you know, a year later have figured out that they had an endorsement that increased, you know, the coverage limit in case of a catastrophe. So it's really important to look for it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's talk about extended replacement coverage. It's an amount over your coverage A limit that provides additional funds when you run out. Okay, when you run out. If you have this, it'll be included in your loss settlement section of the policy, or it could be added by endorsement. Like I said before, the names vary. Look for extended replacement costs, look for, you know, anything like that. The limits vary. You can have, Tracy said that your minimum in Colorado is 25%. Some of the policies I've seen go up to 200% of your coverage A. Okay, most of the policies only apply extended replacement coverage to coverage A, but there's a few out there that do apply it to all of them. So you want to look, okay? Under Colorado law, your insurer should have offered you 20%. Oh, sorry. So I said, so it's 20%, not 25. Okay, these are examples. Again, these are the same slide we showed you last time, so we'll keep going on this one. Okay, code upgrade coverage, okay? Most homeowners policies, but not all of them, have some code upgrade coverage. It's usually 10 or 20%. Some add it as an extra limit, so on top of coverage A, but some policies don't. We have some policies here in California that they'll pay, you know, only within your coverage A limit. So it's important to look there. Most of the time you can buy more, which is important for an older home. Unfortunately, you know, now you've had your loss, so it's, you know, it's a little late on that. But so code upgrade coverage is interesting because it's going to pay you for upgrades to your home, things that you didn't have, that you didn't lose, which is sort of a different concept in insurance. And so when you're rebuilding your home and say you had single pane windows because your house was built in the 50s or something like that, and now the Title 24 regulations say you have to have, you know, double pane windows or whatever, they'll pay that additional cost to bring that home up to the current code. So it's a really good coverage. There you go. Most of the time for both extended replacement cost and code upgrade coverage, you have to spend it to get it. So keep that in mind. This is some sample language. This, I think, is a State Farm. Yeah, OL. This is a State Farm policy. Look for the words additional amount of insurance. Okay, so that's the important line. Some of them will say, it's very rare, but some will say this coverage does not increase the amount of dwelling coverage under coverage A. There's also some differences between damaged and undamaged portions of the building. That goes by policy. A lot of them do pay for, like, say, if only half your house burned but you have to bring the other half up to code, most of the policies will cover that as well. Okay. This is another sample endorsement. So a lot of times you'll find if you're going through, you're going to see in exclusions or losses not insured, you'll see that building ordinance or law is specifically excluded. Don't panic. I mean, right up front, this is an endorsement that adds it back on. And in most of the cases, that's where you'll see the building ordinance or law coverage. Super complicated. Okay, this is a sample endorsement of extended replacement cost. So this is an additional 50%. There's some things here about insuring your dwelling to 100%. And some of you might see, I don't think we have anything in here about it. You might see a co-insurance clause in your policy. Most of the time they're not enforced. If they are, they're super complicated. So maybe seek some help. One of the things I wanted to point out, and the reason that I put this piece of slide in, look at how just reading little bits of your policy can find a lot of coverage. Read the last paragraph there. In the event of a covered loss resulting from a declared catastrophe in the state, the limit for extended dwelling coverage shall be up to twice the percentage of the extended dwelling coverage shown on the declarations. That's just hidden in the policy. This, I think, is a Safeco policy, and it's just there. It's not anywhere else. I scoured the policy. There's, if you keep going, there's one for code upgrades in this policy too. So it's important to read your policy. Okay. Yes, and
We're heading into the home stretch here, so take heart.
Yeah, we're getting close here. I feel like I'm talking a million miles an hour, but okay. So let's talk a little bit about the flow of insurance funds. Some people, one of the common things that we get is people writing into us and saying, you know, I got a payment. What should I do with it? So there's a lot of different ways they can pay you. So first off is advances. So the only thing you can accept advances, they're fine. The only thing you need to know about advances is that they will be subtracted out of final settlement. So if they give you $5,000, you know, I see some people really care like what coverage it's taken out of. It doesn't really matter. If they give you a $5,000 advance on your contents, you can use it for living expenses. Just know that you're going to have to account for it in your accounting. Okay. So that's fine. Now, the ACV payments that they make when the values are set, we also get a lot of, you know, panic calls on this. Your insurance company is going to hopefully within a reasonable amount of time attempt to estimate the value of your damage. They're going to do it. They're going to send you the actual cash value payment. They might not even tell you before they do it. You might just get this check in the mail. Don't worry too much about it. Write them, thank them, acknowledge receipt of it. You can deposit it. You can send it to your mortgage company. And I saw we had a question about that, so we can talk about that in a minute. But know that usually these estimates are just the first step. It's really difficult for these adjusters to estimate a house that is gone. So they need to work with you over a period of time to determine exactly what you lost. Okay, so accepting the payment isn't gonna, you know, do anything. For your peace of mind, you should send them an email and say, you know, I've received it. We need to talk about this or that, and just move on. Then replacement cost payments are that withheld depreciation. So like on your personal property, they're gonna, you know, pay you the actual cash value of your personal property. And as you replace things, you have to send them receipts and they'll release that money. So that's sort of the third bit of the insurance fund. So it's going to come over time. We do recommend generally opening a separate bank account. And is this back to you, Amy? Do you want to go back to this?
Sure. I'll give you a break. Do recommend opening a separate bank account to keep track of the insurance funds that have been paid to you, and then of course your own expenditures, and then keeping track of which bucket of coverage each check comes out of. And we offer a free downloadable accounting spreadsheet that somebody who lost their home in a wildfire put together and donated to us. And there's the link to find that. And here's what it looks like. So this is just a Excel spreadsheet that has been customized. So as we said earlier, keeping up your paper trail is really important. Learning to earn, which is basically what we've been working on tonight. And a couple things, only you know the condition of your property. Again, I try to be respectful of people who work for insurance companies and their adjusters, but we also are realistic on your behalf, which is that with regard to your inventory, your contents, very often adjusters are, because they're typically overloaded, they do look for shortcuts. They do look for ways to reduce their work. And one way they do that sometimes is by depreciating things across the board, sort of trying to apply, like, we're just going to depreciate your stuff by a set percentage, instead of having things be valued as they were. So if you feel like your adjuster is doing that, then not only should you be giving them the information about the condition and value of your property that will help them do it, but just be on the lookout for that. We offer lots of sample letters on our website. You need to customize them to your situation, but they're designed to help you be clear and effective in your communications. We know that doing this on your own is not for everyone. We know that a lot of people find this process to just be too much. And there are ways to deal with that. One way, of course, Tracy's agency is a resource, but they cannot be your free lawyer. They cannot be your free public adjuster. They can help enforce the law. They can help break log jams. They can get your insurer to be more prompt in responding to you. They can help you if your adjuster is being a real pain and not cooperative. They can help you with that situation. But you may want to think about hiring professional help. There's no shame in that. We got a question in the chat in the Q&A about what's the difference between a public adjuster and an independent adjuster. So there are three kinds of adjusters. There are the adjusters that are employed by an insurance company. They're on the payroll. Those are staff adjusters. There are adjusters who get hired by insurance companies to supplement their staff. And those are called independent adjusters, but you can't hire one of those. You can't hire a staff adjuster. You can't hire an independent adjuster. You can, if you want to have your own representative to take it over for you, you can hire a public adjuster. That's a third category of adjusters. Those are people that are licensed and regulated by the Division of Insurance. Those are people who are supposed to do continuing education. And there are quite a few of them that work in Colorado on a regular basis. But after disasters, you always get people that come in from out of state, but you also have a variation in the ethical, the ethics, and also the skill set of your Colorado-based folks. So again, this is just like what we were talking about earlier, whether it's a remediation professional, whether it's a construction professional, whether it's a public adjuster, you got to do your homework. You've got to check references, and really don't just go on, oh, I found them, on the UP website, or I heard that person speak, or that person approached me and solicited me. So again, just really being careful. And the same goes for attorneys. There's a lot of attorneys that really want to help, and and a lot of them have really the heart and the mind to be helpful. But again, insurance is a really special area, and you may, we have seen situations where somebody, an attorney that doesn't really know anything about insurance, offers to help, and it may end up not being all that helpful because they don't know the lay of the land. That's not to say that you can't get help from a family friend or a relative who isn't an insurance lawyer. Sometimes I've had people who are not insurance specialists find these hidden gems in the policy, like what Sandy was pointing out, some of these, like the language that increases your extended replacement. But again, just know that lots of people want to help you, some of them for good reasons, some of them for commercial reasons. And our website is a really good way to help sift between good offers of help and offers that you might just say thanks but no thanks to. These are some of the support sources that we feel are reliable, right? Of course, us and the people that you'll find through us, we do our best to vet people. Tracy's agency is pretty unusual in how proactive they are being in the aftermath of this disaster. And then, of course, previous wildfire survivors, a lot of you I know are now on email threads and different internet resources where lots of people are saying lots of things and have lots of opinions. I really encourage you to try survivor forums, and then just to stick with us. This is number 3 in our core class series. We're going to be doing one. The next one will be on dwelling. The one after that will be on contents, and then, as I said, we'll be doing. Not only will we be doing a clinic where we'll have volunteer lawyers available to help you, but we will be continuing to offer these classes, and we will be drilling down. We will drill down on things like ALE. We will drill down on dwelling valuation. So if you're going to stick with us through the 5 course series, we will do our best to continue to hit on all these nuances and go deeper with you as you need. There may be also case managers available to you soon, which are people that can help point you in the direction of help, like mental health support and also financial help. And then, of course, FEMA is for most of you the main thing you can get from FEMA would be an SBA loan if you're underinsured. And as we mentioned, or if you want to build a project that's more costly than than the insurance that you have. So, and as we said in some of our earlier programs, and I want to repeat that when you apply now for FEMA funds of any kind, if at first you don't succeed, try again. So this is just a snapshot of some of the sample letters that we have for you to customize. A couple of reminders: time is on your side in this situation. I know it often doesn't feel like that. I know it often feels like I gotta hurry up, but really it's very true that the longer a claim stays open, the more money the insurer typically pays. It's also true that nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you can ask for things that aren't technically available in the policy, extensions of time, and a cash advance on your ALE, there's no harm in asking. They may say no, but there's no harm in asking. And just to remind you that fully and accurately documenting and valuing both your dwelling and your contents is going to take some time. And even though a lot of adjusters will be quick with their exactimate estimate and they can spit that out, again, computers don't rebuild houses. Construction professionals do. So what really matters is what a construction professional would charge you. And we are very aware that getting a construction professional to give you that kind of information right now is really hard. We know that. And so, I think you heard it very clearly from Sandy. If your insurer is throwing checks your way, that's great. As long as you are clear and look at both sides of the check, make sure they don't say full and final. And as long as you are clear in your communications with them that thank you for this payment, we consider this a partial payment, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on the balance of funds that are owed to us, is a perfectly appropriate and safe way to deal with those offers. Now, the team has done a phenomenal job here tonight at answering all the questions that have been coming in. There were a couple that I left open on purpose because I thought they might be helpful for us to answer. And this one I'd like to hear from Sandy and Tracy, either of you. if you buy a new home, can you rent that home to yourself and use ALE? Now, we said earlier, nothing ventured, nothing gained. You can ask for what you want. And I hear people doing all kinds of creative things. So gals, what do we think of this question?
I think that the company owes you the fair rental value of your home. So what your home could have rented for before the loss. And you can use that towards rent for an apartment, or you can use it towards a mortgage if you buy a home. So if your mortgage is more than the fair rental value, you will only receive the fair rental value still. So that's the amount that you're going to get. But many folks are doing that, and the insurers are paying.
I think that I think that's great.
Anything to add there, Sandy?
No, a lot of them get a little sideways if you try to rent it to yourself, but I like Tracy's answer better because, it just deals with the fair rental value and keeps things cleaner. And then you can go do what you need to do on your own once you get the fair rental value.
Yeah. So Sandy, we got a question recently about, the signed sworn proof of loss. And I think people sometimes get confused between a proof of loss and a inventory, for example. So we got a question here. Can you discuss the obligation to submit a sworn statement within 60 days?
Yeah, and it's really confusing because the loss settlement provisions do say that. However, the standard and practice in the insurance industry is that you do not have to sign and send a sworn statement in proof of loss unless your insurance company asks you for it. If your insurance company asks you for it, you absolutely have to do it, and do it within the proper time limit specified by your policy. And basically what it is just a statement saying, I'm making a claim. And we've heard from a few people already who've been asked. There's a couple of carriers that just do it sort of as a matter of course. Most of them don't. But if you do get one, obviously it's too soon to know how much your loss is. So we recommend leaving the amounts open or say undetermined, that you'll submit things because you can't really nail down what you're going to owe. But in general, if you've been asked for one, then do it. If you haven't been asked for one, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna be wrapping up soon. So we're just gonna answer the questions that are in there now, but please hold your questions for our next event. We really appreciate both our staff's time and also our Tracy's time and our interpreter as well. So we're just gonna hit these questions that are in here, but please don't continue throwing them in there. You can hold your questions. We will be doing another event next week and another one after that. So couple good ones here. Ben asks, thoughts about concerns that hiring a public adjuster will turn the relationship adversarial with the insurance company. How does the insurance industry, how do they deal with this? Well, it depends. It's a great question. It depends on the adjuster. It depends on the insurer, because if you bring a good public adjuster in that really knows their stuff, and a company adjuster can be relieved because that adjuster is kind of going to make their job easier, right? They're going to work up the file. They're going to document your loss. They're going to value. They're going to do the negotiations. But of course, when you do hire a PA, it often will cut you out of the process, and unless your PA is really diligent about keeping you in the loop. So if you do consider hiring a PA, the insurer cannot punish you or do anything to drag things out. If anything, they should be even more responsive to a professional who's now communicating on your behalf. That said, Obviously, adjusters who work for insurance companies, I shouldn't say obviously, but they are trained not to like public adjusters, I'd say. And there is a big variation in quality. So I wouldn't worry that it's going to, just like people say, oh, if I file a complaint with the Division of Insurance, is my insurance company going to take it out on me? Are they going to be mad at me? And the answer is they're not allowed to by law. They're not allowed to take it out on you. They're not allowed. The same duty that they have to you transfers to the PA. They have to be reasonable. They have to be prompt. And it's the same duties apply. So let's see, we got through all the slides. This is another reminder about the library. This is a reminder about the upcoming events that we have. So we just have two more questions, or one. Sarah asks, and Sandy, you can hit this one. Are you still entitled to the full amount of your fair rental value if you can only find a rental that's where the rent is cheaper than the fair rental value of your house?
Yeah, if you negotiate an amount for the fair rental value, then that's the amount you're entitled to, and you just go about your day and find what you have to find and go on from there. But yes, you can, as long as you negotiate that amount.
Okay. And then the very last question, and I mean it, is it's kind of a common one. If I do buy a replacement home, does that cut off my ALE? And the short answer is yes. Well, Tracy, okay, maybe Tracy has a different answer.
Purchased as a temporary home and you're rebuilding, then again, the fair rental value is still owed to you. If I understood that question right, I didn't read it. I'm sorry, I was just listening.
That's okay.
So if you buy a house to use as a temporary residence or replacement residence, then yes, you should still get that.
Okay,
Yeah.
but this person asks, actually, I may have read it wrong. If I sell the land that my lot was on, does that conclude ALE? Definitely not.
No, land has nothing to do with the policy, right? So whatever you do with that, it's not covered. It's
Right.
not.
Right. The only thing they might do is push you to buy a replacement house because now you can't rebuild there.
Right, right.
But they also don't necessarily need to know. It's not really their business.
So, okay.
Okay.
Again, this has been a great, none of this is great, but this has been a very productive and helpful program. I'm so pleased that we were able to answer all the questions that came in. And I want to thank my team, Valerie Brown, who's been furiously making sure your questions were getting answered. Carrie Waite, who has been furiously answering your questions, as well as Sandy, Tracy, and Rosabella. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you at our next event, which, as I said, will be Tuesday night for the Survivor, Wednesday night next week, where we'll be drilling down on your dwelling claim. And Sandy will be back, Val will be back talking to you about that. And we look forward to continuing to support you on your road to recovery. I hope you have a good rest of your evening. I hope you get a good night's sleep. And thank you so much for your attention and all the hard work that you are doing on behalf of your household. Good evening.